Return from the Abyss, Book 1.
Chapter 5. The Guild and the Trial. The Fulcrum Guild building dominated the eastern quarter of Greyhaven like a fortress within a fortress. 4 stories of gray stone rose from the cobbled street, its architecture deliberately imposing. Thick walls designed to withstand siege, narrow windows that could serve as archer positions, a reinforced door wide enough to admit 3 men walking abreast. Above the entrance, carved into the stone lintel, was the guild's symbol, a mountain with crossed swords. Caden stood across the street, studying the building with the same careful assessment he'd applied to every potential shelter in the abyss. Multiple exits visible from here, the main entrance, a side door in the alley, upper windows. Foot traffic constant but not overwhelming. Guards posted but relaxed. The building radiated permanence, strength, the promise of something that had stood for generations and would stand for generations more. "Impressive, isn't it?" Myra said beside him. They'd spent the last hour walking the quieter streets of Greyhaven, giving Caden time to decompress after the incident with the drunk. His hands had finally stopped shaking. The guild's been here for 200 years. This building's seen more hunters come and go than anyone can count. Caden's eyes traced the flow of people entering and exiting. Most wore practical clothing similar to Myra's group. Leather armor, visible weapons, the bearing of people comfortable with violence. A few had the elaborate robes of mages. Others wore heavier plate armor that gleamed in the afternoon sun. "Lot of fighters," he observed. "The guild's the heart of monster hunting on this continent," Myra explained. "Hunters from both kingdoms come here for contracts, training, equipment. Neutral ground. Politics stop at that door." She started walking toward the entrance. "Come on, let's get you registered." Caden followed, his bone sword drawing glances from passers-by. He'd grown used to the stares over the past hour, learned to ignore them. Just another form of threat assessment. Most looked out of curiosity rather than hostility. The main door was open, and the moment Caden stepped through, his senses were assaulted by a familiar yet foreign environment. The interior was vast, a single great hall that took up most of the ground floor. The ceiling soared 20 feet overhead, supported by massive wooden beams that looked like they'd been hewn from trees the size of houses. Dozens of hunters filled the space, clustered around tables, leaning against walls, arguing in small groups. Their voices created a constant rumble of conversation, punctuated by occasional laughter or shouted greetings. One entire wall was covered by what Myra had called the contract board, a massive wooden surface pinned with hundreds of pieces of parchment, each presumably detailing a monster problem somewhere that needed solving. Hunters crowded around it, pulling down contracts, discussing options, arguing over who had claim to what. The air was thick with smells that Caden's nose cataloged automatically. Blood, old and new, soaked into leather and never quite washed out. Metal and oil from weapons being maintained. Sweat and leather. Smoke from the massive fireplace at the far end. Roasting meat from somewhere deeper in the building. And underneath it all, something sharper. Adrenaline, tension, the particular scent of people who lived with violence as a constant companion. It should have been overwhelming, should have triggered the same panic response as the crowded market. Instead, Caden felt something unexpected. Calm. Here, everyone spoke the same language he did. Not words, though the constant discussions of tactics, weak points, and survival strategies were certainly intelligible, but a deeper language, the language of hunters, of survivors, of people who understood that the world was dangerous and had chosen to face that danger head-on rather than hide from it. For the first time since waking up in the forest, Caden felt like he might actually understand the place he'd found himself in. "Myra Holdwood," a voice boomed across the hall. "Heard you were bringing in something interesting." A massive figure detached itself from a group near the contract board and strode toward them. Caden's assessment was automatic and immediate. Male, early 50s, 190 centimeters tall, heavily muscled despite his age. Gray hair hung to his shoulders, and a scar bisected his entire face, a savage line that ran from his right temple, across the bridge of his nose, and down to his left jaw. The left eye was milky white, clearly blind. But the right eye, gray and sharp as broken glass, fixed on Caden with an intensity that made him instinctively shift his weight to the balls of his feet. This man was dangerous. Had been dangerous, still could be dangerous. Every line of his body spoke of decades of violence survived, of battles won through skill and ruthlessness. "Thorn," Myra greeted him with a nod that held respect. "This is Caden Ash. Found him in Shadow Needle Forest. He needs registration." Thorn, Gravelock, because this had to be the guildmaster Myra had mentioned, stopped 3 paces away and looked Caden up and down with the eye of a man appraising a weapon. The examination was thorough, clinical, noting every detail from the bone sword to the scars visible on Caden's arms to the way he held himself. "Ash," Thorn rumbled, his voice like stones grinding together. "From the dead village?" "Yes." Caden's voice was steadier now. Hours of speaking had loosened his throat somewhat. "Thought the plague killed everyone?" "Left before." Thorn's eye narrowed. 10 years ago you would have been 12. 12. The guildmaster's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his gaze. A calculation being made, pieces being assembled. "And you've been where for 10 years? Caden met his stare without flinching. "Surviving." For a long moment, neither man spoke. Around them, the hall's ambient noise continued. Conversations, laughter, the rustle of parchment. But in the small bubble of space between Caden and Thorn, there was only tension and assessment. Finally, Thorn grunted. "That sword, you make it yourself?" "Yes." "Kill the thing it came from?" "Yes." "How big?" Caden gestured with his free hand, indicating a creature perhaps 4 meters long. "Reptilian, heavy armor, took 3 days to track." Fight lasted 2 minutes. Thorn's scarred face remained impassive, but his good eye gleamed with something that might have been approval. "Myra says you can fight. Says you've got reflexes that would make an A rank jealous. That true?" "Don't know," Caden said honestly. "Never fought an A rank." A bark of laughter erupted from Thorn's chest. "Honest, good. I'm tired of cocky bastards who think they're gods because they killed a few goblins." He jerked his head toward the contract board. "You want to register, you need to prove you can handle guild work. Standard trial for all newcomers. Kill a Class E monster solo. Bring back proof. Do that, and you get your F rank badge." "What's the contract?" Myra asked. Thorn pulled a piece of parchment from his belt, unfolding it with practiced ease. "Giant rat. Been living in the cellars of the old Temple of Ascension on the eastern edge of the city. Killed 2 beggars who were sheltering there last week. Temple priest wants it gone, offering 10 gold for the job." He held the parchment out to Caden, who took it carefully. The writing meant nothing to him. He'd never learned to read beyond the most basic symbols. But there was a crude drawing of the rat at the bottom. Large, vicious looking, lots of teeth. "Class E," Caden said. "Bottom of the barrel as far as real threats go," Thorn agreed. "But it's big enough to kill an unprepared civilian, which makes it guild business. You take it, you go alone. No help from Myra or anyone else. You bring back the head, you pass. You die? Well," he shrugged. "Then you weren't cut out for this work anyway." Myra's hand moved to Caden's shoulder, but she caught herself before making contact, learning from earlier. "You don't have to do this now. You could rest, recover, come back tomorrow." "No." Caden's voice was flat, certain. He'd survived 10 years in the abyss. A giant rat, no matter how large, was nothing. Less than nothing. "I'll go now." Thorn's scarred mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "Good answer. Temple's half a league east. Can't miss it. Big stone building with a broken tower. Cellar entrance is around back. Rats probably sleeping this time of day, but don't count on it. They're cunning bastards when they want to be." "Understood." Caden turned toward the door. "Caden," Myra's voice stopped him. When he looked back, her green eyes were serious, concerned. "Be careful. I know you've survived worse, but—" "I'll be back," he said simply, because he would. This was nothing compared to the fang crawlers, the shadow devourers, the 1,000 other things that had tried to kill him in the last decade. A rat, even a giant one, was just another problem to solve. He walked out of the guild hall, leaving the warmth and noise behind. The Temple of Ascension had clearly seen better days. The building squatted on the outskirts of Greyhaven like a dying thing, its glory decades in the past. Once white stone was now stained gray with age and pollution. The tower Thorn had mentioned was indeed broken. Its upper half collapsed in on itself, leaving jagged edges reaching toward the sky like broken teeth. The windows were dark, empty, some boarded over, others just gaping holes. Weeds pushed through cracks in the surrounding courtyard. Abandoned, forgotten. The perfect lair for something that wanted to avoid human attention. Caden circled the building once, noting exits, possible ambush points, the general layout, old habits. The back entrance Thorn had mentioned was easy to find. A wooden door, half-rotted, hanging askew on rusted hinges. Beyond it, stone steps descended into darkness. He paused at the threshold, his enhanced senses extending downward. The smell hit him first. Damp stone, rot, and underneath, something organic. Feces, old blood, the musk of a large animal. The rat was definitely down there. The steps were slick with moisture, and something else, probably the algae that grows in damp, sunless places. Caden descended carefully, each footfall placed with precision. His eyes adjusted to the darkness quickly. 10 years in the abyss's perpetual twilight had given him vision that functions in near total darkness. Not as well as full daylight, but enough. The cellar was a maze of interconnected chambers, remnants of whatever the temple had once stored down here. Support pillars rose at irregular intervals. Debris littered the floor. Broken furniture, rotted cloth, shattered pottery, and everywhere, the smell grew stronger. Caden tracked it the way he'd tracked 1,000 predators before, following the scent gradient, noting the disturbed dust patterns on the floor, the claw marks on stone where the creature had squeezed through narrow passages. The trail led deeper, toward the oldest part of the cellar, where the darkness was absolute. There, in the farthest chamber, curled against the far wall in a nest of shredded fabric and gnawed bones, was the rat. The priest's description hadn't done it justice. The creature was massive, easily the size of a large cow, with a body that was mostly just bulk and muscle. Its fur was a mottled gray-brown, matted and filthy. The tail was as thick as Caden's leg, easily 3 meters long, hairless and covered in rough scales. But it was the head that drew the eye. A wedge-shaped skull, dominated by a mouth full of yellow teeth, each one as long as a finger. The front incisors were particularly impressive, jutting out even when the mouth was closed, worn to razor edges by constant growing. The rat's eyes, small, red, malevolent, snapped open. It had sensed him, smelled him probably. The nose twitched, whiskers trembling, and the massive body uncoiled with surprising speed. The rat charged. For something so large, it was fast, much faster than its size suggested. It covered the distance in 3 bounds, claws scrabbling on stone, mouth opening in a screech that echoed off the walls. Caden didn't move until the last possible second. The rat lunged, jaws wide, aiming for his torso, a killing bite meant to crush bones and organs. But Caden had fought things in the abyss that moved faster than thought. This creature, for all its size and fury, telegraphed its attacks with the clarity of someone shouting their intentions. He sidestepped left, minimal movement, just enough to let the rat's momentum carry it past. His bone sword came up in the same motion, edge angled downward, targeting the exposed tendon on the creature's left hind leg. The blade bit deep, tendon parted. The rat's rear leg collapsed mid-stride, its charge turning into an uncontrolled tumble that sent it crashing into the wall with a bone-jarring impact. It tried to turn, to face him, but the crippled leg wouldn't bear weight. The creature was fast, but three-legged, it was predictable. Its next attack came as a desperate lunge forward, trying to use its bulk to pin him while its teeth found flesh. Caden was already moving, circling to the right, his sword rising in a perfectly vertical arc. The rat's neck stretched as it turned to track him, exposing the most vulnerable spot on its body. The bone sword descended. The blade, honed to a monomolecular edge and wielded by someone with 10 years of practice in efficient killing, met the rat's neck at the optimal angle. There was resistance, bone, thick muscle, tough hide, but Caden's strength and momentum carried the strike through. The head separated from the body cleanly. Both pieces hit the floor. The body twitched violently for perhaps 3 seconds, legs kicking in death spasms. Then it went still. Silence returned to the cellar, broken only by Caden's steady breathing, not even elevated. His heartbeat was calm, no adrenaline dump, no excitement or satisfaction. Just another kill, nothing special. He cleaned his sword on the rat's fur, then bent to examine the severed head. The cut was perfect, a single strike, no ragged edges, precise. The kind of cut that spoke of absolute confidence and perfect execution. Caden gripped the head by one ear and started back toward the surface. Myra had followed him, of course she had. She emerged from the cellar to find her standing in the temple courtyard, trying to look casual and failing completely. Her hand rested on her sword hilt, not threateningly, just ready. When she saw him, saw the massive rat head dangling from his hand, her eyes widened. "How long?" she asked. Caden thought about it. The tracking had taken maybe 5 minutes. The actual fight? 10 seconds, maybe less. 10? Myra stopped herself, visibly processing. You tracked it, found it, and killed it in under 10 seconds? Fight was 10 seconds. Finding took longer. She stared at him for a moment longer, then shook her head. Come on, Thorn's going to want to see this. They walked back to the guild in silence, Myra occasionally glancing at him sideways, clearly reassessing everything she thought she knew. Caden ignored the stares from civilians as they passed. The sight of a wild-looking man carrying a severed rat head the size of a beer keg attracted attention. The guild hall erupted in noise when they entered. "No fucking way!" someone shouted. "He did it! Look at that cut, clean as a whistle!" Thorn pushed through the crowd, his single eye locked on the rat's head. He took it from Caden's grip, examining the severed neck with the focus of a craftsman appraising another's work. His scarred fingers traced the cut, testing the bone, checking for raggedness or multiple strikes. Finally, he looked up at Caden. One cut. It wasn't a question, but Caden nodded anyway. How long did the fight take? 10 seconds. Murmurs rippled through the gathered hunters. Someone laughed in disbelief. Thorn's expression remained neutral, but his eye gleamed with something sharp and calculating. The standard trial is to kill the creature and bring back proof, Thorn said loudly, his voice cutting through the speculation. Caden Ash has done so. By guild law, he's earned his F rank. He pulled a small metal badge from his pocket, a simple circle with the guild symbol. Welcome to the Fulcrum Guild, Ash. Caden took the badge, the metal cool against his palm. F rank, the lowest tier. But it was a start, a foothold in this world he barely understood. However, Thorn continued, his voice dropping lower so only those closest could hear, I'm making a note in your file. You fight like someone with years of experience. You move like a veteran. And that cut? He gestured to the rat's head. That's professional work. I don't know what you survived for 10 years, boy, but it made you dangerous. He leaned in closer, his scarred face inches from Caden's. I'm watching you, not as a threat, yet, but as someone who wants to know what the hell you really are. Understood? Caden met his gaze without flinching. Understood. Thorn held the stare for another moment, then nodded. Good. Get cleaned up, get some real clothes, and stay out of trouble. He turned to address the hall.
"Show's over. Back to work, all of you." The crowd dispersed gradually, though many hunters continued to shoot curious glances at Caden. Myra moved to his side, a small smile on her scarred face. "Well," she said quietly, "that was something. 10 seconds. Gods, Caden, you barely gave that thing a chance." He shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. In the abyss, efficient killing was survival. Here, apparently, it was noteworthy. "Come on," Myra said, guiding him toward the exit. "Let's get you that room at the inn I mentioned. You've earned some rest." As they left the guild hall, Caden glanced back once. Thorn stood near the contract board, speaking quietly to another hunter, but his single eye tracked Caden's departure. The guildmaster's words echoed in his mind. "I'm watching you." Fair enough, Caden thought, because he was watching too. Watching this world, learning its rules, trying to understand how someone who'd spent 10 years in hell could possibly fit into a place where people worry about politics and money and laws. He didn't have answers yet, but for the first time since returning, he had a direction, a purpose beyond mere survival. Maybe that was enough.
Thank you for listening. New chapters will be released daily on the channel. This audio material was produced exclusively for the Section 56 channel. All rights reserved. Have a nice day.